Please pray with me. Spirit of love, Spirit of wisdom, touch our hearts, inspire our minds, minister to us, your people, we pray. May only truth be spoken, may only truth be heard, we ask. Amen. Well, Jesus was a storyteller, and today we hear one of his parables. And these parables are stories, they're not literal facts. And the number one job of a storyteller is what? To keep the audience's attention. And Jesus was good at that. He used exaggeration, and he used dramatic changes in the plot line and surprises and often jarring content and humor. And so this parable is not a model for employee relationships. and it's not a parable about making money. But it's a parable for me that really emphasizes two foundational things that Jesus was always lifting up. The first is that we all have value and we all have gifts and influence. We underestimate our influence because we think of ourselves as individuals, but we're not. We are all interconnected with one another and with nature around us. And we have influence every day with the people that we interact with, whether we realize it or not. And so it's important that we know we have influence so that we can influence in a positive way. I still remember these many years later, when I was in college in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was actually on Lookout Mountain just outside of Chattanooga. I was driving over to the Tri-City area, Boones Creek, Tennessee, to visit a friend of mine. And it was pouring, one of those hard southern rains where it's just like a sheet of rain. It's like a bathtub. It just keeps coming down there. You can hardly see with the wipers going full blast. And I was out of gas. And so I turned into a gas station. Those were back in the days where you didn't have to get out of the car. And this big older gentleman in the big slicker just comes out, moseying over to the window. And I thought he'd be in a foul mood, you know. And I roll my window down and he's got this big smile on his face. How are you doing in the rain? Are you keeping safe? Would you like me to fill you up? Right? Honest to goodness, I still remember this one. Because I left that gas station encouraged, because I was kind of stressed driving in that rain, and I just left less stressed and feeling great about life, because this heart was just radiating into me warmth and humor and goodness despite all that rain. And of course, maybe you've had the other experiences too. I mean, one cross word from somebody you're trying to buy something from or whatever can just take your spirits down. We are influential. Not through anything we have done because we didn't create ourselves. It's just that we share in the divine nature. And we have that capacity. And of course, every day we're reminded of how influential to the negative we can be when our lives are taken over by evil and the negative dark emotions. And so for better or worse, we're very influential. Whether we have $1,000 given to us, or $2,000, or $5,000, or whatever, we are influential. Our lives are of great value. And the second thing that I think Jesus is really getting at here is that nothing good in our lives, nothing truly meaningful, nothing we'll ever do that is really of great value, nothing we do that when we're dying, we won't be able to look back on it and take heart from and feel good about it. None of that stuff happens to us without taking a risk. I mean, if you've ever been in a close relationship, if you've ever married somebody, you took a risk. If you ever had a child, you took a risk. You got to take risks. And so in our parable, that employee that didn't want to take the risk, the boss is angry. He says, "You're fired." Because our lives require this risk. And we've kind of lost it in our Christian vernacular, because when we say the words faith, hope, and love, which were really the core of the early Christian church, and you see it throughout the New Testament, we now don't understand faith, the word meaning of the word faith anymore. We really should be calling faith risk. It's risk, hope, and love. We've turned faith, the church, when it became the big Roman institution, that became the opposite of everything Jesus stood for, it reinterpreted faith as doctrine, as beliefs, as creeds. But faith in the New Testament is never a noun. Jesus, over and over again, when people come to him for healing, he says, "Your faith has made you whole." It can't possibly be what they believe, because he often said to non-Jewish people, like the Syrophoenician woman, and the centurion soldier, the Roman soldier who came to have his child out. He says, "You have amazing faith. You've taken the risk to come. That risk is paying off." And so our whole faith has moved from being this experiential willingness every day under our hope and our belief in love to take risks, to being a head game. We have all these churches around the world arguing about different things and making rules and all kinds of stuff that have nothing to do with love. And so as I was thinking about these two themes of how we are born with such great value and influence, and how we need to take a risk to share that, I got thinking about the Lion King. Now, how many of you have seen The Lion King in one version or another? So many of you. If you ever have a chance to read it, or there's a new version out now, and the original version was animation of Simba, the little lion cub, and his dad's the king, the pride. But there's a new movie that animates it. They look like real animals. I'm not going to go to the new movie because I love the animated one. And I think animators can express more emotion in the animation than you get with a literal depiction of the animals. But I'm getting old, so that's just me. But the new one would be great too. It's a great story. And it's really a story that begins with a baptism. At the beginning of The Lion King, Simba's baptized. So what you see is all the different funny animals come to church, just like you guys. And they're all coming together to the big rock that's way up high. And Rafiki, that's me, he's this funny looking dude. And he goes and he makes the sign on Simba. He does a circle, we do the sign of the cross. And then he takes Simba and he raises him up, and the light comes down, just like in the Jesus baptism. And the bird, the Holy Spirit, flies around in celebration, and everybody trumpets and shouts and tweets and does whatever the animals do, just like we do when we're singing. And so it's got a great baptismal theme to it. And that's what our baptisms signify. At our baptisms, we sign a child or an adult with the sign of the cross. Well, what's the sign of the cross if not risk? Right? You can't follow the way of love without taking a risk. And we follow one who risked his all and died on the cross because he wouldn't change his message that the least needs to be included and that oppression is unfair. And so we have that sign. But at baptism, there's also oil. And oil in the Hebrew tradition is the sign of empowerment. In fact, that's still carried through to this day. Queen Elizabeth, our queen, before she was coronated, she was taken to a side chapel and anointed with oil. Oil was the sign of anointing, God's presence and power upon us. In the Old Testament, the priests were anointed as they became priests. And so in baptism we see these two fundamental signs. That the one who is baptized is empowered, is anointed. And that's what Christ means, anointed one. We share the same thing. It's such a shame that after the church joined with the Roman Empire, the whole meaning was lost. And by the time of the Great Plague, the whole message was we're nobody, we're born in sin. God doesn't want to have anything to do with us unless we get saved through Jesus. And when people died, they worried about whether they were going to get to heaven or be in purgatory or worse. And it's such a shame because in the early 400 years of the church, what was the greatest, the two great things that people admired about the Christians, even if they weren't Christians? One was, oh, how they love. And two, how they die. They aren't afraid of death. They know that to live in Christ is wonderful and to die is great too. And that's what these essential symbols talk about, the oil and the cross in baptism. When we lay hands on someone, we're signifying that they've been called and equipped to have influence, to live the way of Jesus, to make this world a more loving place, a place where everyone's given the opportunity to live a life of dignity and respect, and to take the risk of making kindness, respect, and fairness the chief consideration of our lives every day. In our families, are we respectful? Are we kind? Are we fair? Our businesses, how can we help in the way we conduct ourselves bring added value of kindness, respect, and fairness? It's the chief consideration that our lives call us to, and as Christians we signify in baptism. And that brings us to the slave who hides his talents. And that's because the slave is fearful. I reckon that all the worst things I've ever done came out of fear. And I reckon that all the worst things we see happen in the world around us come out of fear too. And I could say greed, but I think greed comes from fear. Fear of not having enough. I was a financial controller of a company in Halifax for a few years, and I got to know the bank manager well. And we was talking about his richer clients, and he said, I had this gentleman in, he's a multi-millionaire, he's 85, he still works. And I said to him, how much money's enough? He said, oh, just another dollar. It's got to be fear under there. And what was Jesus harping on the most about in his Gospels? Faith, risk, and don't be afraid. Because those things are the key, isn't it? Right? Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. When the angels come to Mary, the angels come to Joseph, don't be afraid, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. Have faith, don't be afraid, have faith. Because without faith, it's impossible to please God. Why? Because without taking a risk, you can't love. And with love, conservatory with my grade 8 piano. But I didn't learn to play by ear, and I got lazy, and I stopped playing by note, and now I can't play by note. And so if I want to learn a song, I got to get my wife to play it for me, so I can hear it. But there's some complicated songs I just can't, I'm not good enough to do here, so I can't play them. I lost an ability because I didn't lose it. And of course, as we get older, what do we hear from our doctors? Use it or lose it, baby. So I'm trying to get more active. And I'm playing softball at the moment, but every Tuesday and Thursday it rains. I don't know what that's about. And we have this influence because we're so connected. Often somebody will come to me and they're really upset because of what their partner's doing or somebody in the family's doing or the boss is doing. And we feel the influence of others that we're connected to, right? When they're in distress or they're not behaving badly, or they're behaving badly. And of course they're so frustrated because when someone we care about or someone we have to deal with is off the rails, we don't feel like we're influential. We just feel frustrated because we feel so powerless, right? That's not really so. The problem is, we think we're supposed to help somebody else change. We think we're supposed to be able to get them to do the right thing. And that doesn't work. It just doesn't work. But here's where our power comes from. You know that jigsaw puzzle? When that puzzle gets complete, okay, the reality is that if we are all the jigsaws, none of us can change the shape of any other piece of the puzzle. And there's nothing more frustrating in this life than trying to change the shape of somebody else's piece. But here's the thing. When you got the puzzle there, what happens if you were able to change your piece? It throws the whole puzzle into chaos. You want to be influential and make changes in the spheres of influence you live in? Change your piece. And it's hard, because we're part of the system, and the system is crazy. We tend to go and be crazy with the system. And so I came from a really crazy system, and what I've learned over the years is when I'm with a system where someone's off the rails or the system's off the rails, I have to say to myself, okay, what would I do in this situation if the situation around me wasn't crazy? And then I said, okay, that's what I've got to do. And so I just focus on being my best me and responding not as the system expects me to, but responding as I ought to. And with some support and thoughtfulness, we can do that. And it's amazing the changes. I met a good friend about 14 years ago, and she began to make changes in her life. She was an alcoholic, and she'd been in AA about 6 years, but she came from a very dysfunctional family. She was close to her dad. You know, whenever she visited home, they'd watch hockey together, and he always liked her company. But her mom was distant from her. Her sister wouldn't speak to her, you know, and if she was visiting home and the sister called and she answered, her sister would just hang up. You know how painful that is? How painful it is to have your mother that's distant from you? And her brother just didn't talk to anyone. And she began this practice of letting go of her expectations that her family could change or that she could change them, and just focusing on what was the best thing for her. So she stopped chasing her mother, and she just started to respond and do what seemed appropriate. And then just mysteriously, about 5 years later, as her father became very frail and had to go to a nursing home, all of a sudden, her mother just opened up to her. And she was like in shock for 3 months. And and this new relationship happened. But I believe it happened because she had stopped chasing her mother. She had rid herself of anger at her mother and hurt. And she just became a calm, non-anxious presence with her mom, not expecting her mom to do any more than her mom could do. And then she came back from 3 weeks at home, and she emailed me. She said, "You're not going to believe this." She said, "My sister, who hasn't spoken to me for 15 years, called the house and asked for me." And she had let go of her anger at her sister. She actually in her head thought, okay, I don't have a sister anymore. So there's this human being who's got real problems, and she developed an empathy. But she had to stop thinking of her sister as a sister because her sister couldn't function as a sister, you see. And her sister came over to the house and just said, "I'm so sorry. I've got severe mental illness, and I don't know why I've been this way with you." And again, she's just walking and saying, "Wow." Now, it doesn't always work out like that. I mean, my parents weren't able to become healthy, but I was able to have a relationship with them without being angry anymore. And I was able to have a relationship with them so that when each of them died, I was at peace and could be present without all that inner turmoil and drama. So friends, we can be the miracle just by being the best people God's created us to be and claim our baptism title as people who have the oil of power and influence because we've got the ability to love and the ability to reflect and make thoughtful decisions. And people of the cross who are willing to take the risk for what is right and fair and good, knowing that our lives will be enriched. We'll know joy even in sorrow. And when it comes our time to die, we will look back at a life of meaning with thanksgiving in our hearts for the blessing that was our lives. And so we give thanks that whatever our talents are, they are worth investing. And only good comes from love shared.